Hello everybody, my name is Troublemaker, and we're looking at the Chinese units. Yes, the People's Republic of China. So a lot of the vehicles here are actually semi-copies of other vehicles. The Chinese reverse engineer other people's technology, and then they deploy it themselves. So if you see a lot of similar elements with other nations like Russia, then that's why. And a lot of the units are direct copies in almost every single way. But the Chinese are a nation of productivity, of manufacturing, and they're able to reverse engineer them, make them very easy to replicate, and get en masse in cheap numbers. So first is going to be our command jeeps, and this is a 100-pointer called the BJ-212. Don't ask me what BJ stands for, I have no idea, but I'm sure some of you might. It's just a standard Jeep, nothing too particularly exciting, but it is different than the others because it has lots of nice shade. So our commander will not get sunburnt. Also with our command Jeep variant, we have this bad boy. It's 110 points. You know, what makes this different? It's just a Jeep. It doesn't have any more armor. It has no more strength. It's faster. It's faster and it's amphibious. That would be it. Yes, you can tell. I guess I should have been able to tell it's amphibious because there's actually a little ring here on the top. And of course the Chinese are the Red Dragon with North Korea, which we'll be doing next. So keep that in mind. If this feels a little bit empty, maybe it needs a little bit of North Korea. They have Astra Helicopter, the Z5, which once again, star of China on the side here, putting their flag on that really weird bent reticulating helicopter thing here, but I'm sure it was. This is going to be our command squad, the Ji Hui Ban. Shi Hui Ban. It's a really tough one to pronounce. Cool enough, they have two different types of arms here, and we're going to be able to deploy these in 4 ways, so kind of an average for the factions. And 2 of those are going to be a helicopter, which are very, very, very potent these days. And oh, the Chinese inscriptions on everything. Another command we have is the ZZZ. Yes, I am Canadian. I can say Z or Z if I choose. 701, which is just your armored APC command. It's got 2 points of armor in the front and the sides, which means that it'll be able to take a nice amount of hits. Valuable because it doesn't actually have any kind of, you know, armaments on it to up the cost. And of course our ZZZ 591, which is not really a command tank as much as it is an armor, or like I guess it is a command tank, but it's like a medium command tank. You'll note the armor values are really terrible, very terrible for this particular command tank. And for an extra 70 points, you can actually get a T-80U-K, which is your most heavily armored one in the game. So will this unit get used? I don't know. It will depend on balancing and stuff. I mean, if it has enough availability, if the price goes down, maybe people will. But right now, you're buying basically like a 50-point tank and adding 130 points onto it. It doesn't make sense. The Chinese will be able to supply themselves in 2 ways. The first is this ridiculous-looking helicopter. I don't know where the supplies would go on this thing, but this is it. It is massive. It is huge. It's got lots of glass, which is always cool, and lots of reflection, which is always awesome for combat. And a nice little insignia on the side here with like some blue wings with a red Chinese star on it. Very, very cool. For some reason, it feels like this is used for rescue operations, naval rescue operations, because we have something kind of like this in Canada, and that's what we use it for. So this is the SX250 Cargo. It's a pretty standardized vehicle. It's got 15 points cost versus 10 of the normal, and it's got 800 liters of fuel. Not too shabby. But yes, that's the only 2 ways to supply your units as the Chinese. As far as infantry goes, all brand new infantry. Here's the Fan Hua Bing. Fan Hua Bing. That's a good name. And these guys have their flamethrower, flamethrower napalm infantry. They'll be able to blaze, create a little circle of fire, of which will cause stunning, loss of morale, stabilizers going down, and damage, of course. And you can deploy the Fan Hua Bing in 4 different vehicles, which are all very similarly named, by the way, but they're all very, very different. And we'll be covering these vehicles more closely in the vehicle section. Can't airborne these napalm, so we're not going to see any napalm rushes from China. We do have the Hong Ying Za, which is a 2-man little, you know, anti-air squad. 5 points. The price is right. The range is a little bit suspect and weak, but against helicopters, pretty damn good. So we might see some use out of these guys. I've been playing around a little bit. It's really hard to make these guys useful. But once again, we have 4 different vehicles for this one, and for this variant, which is Hongying 5B, these are 5A, we have also 1 more. And once again, these are both anti-air vehicles, or anti-air units, sorry. This one's 5 points, and this one's 10 points. Much higher range, much better accuracy, probably more likely to be used. So here's our Li... I think J's pronounced H's, aren't they? Yang? Li Yang? Maybe Jiang, like a G, like a Li Jiang, Li Jiang, Li Jiang, Jiang. Ah, there's no G in there. Li Jian, Li Jian, Legion. They could be called legions. Legions. Okay, these are legions. That's a weird name. These are going to be one of your spec ops types. You know, they're only can be deployed by helicopters, which is, you know, can be kind of unfortunate, but they'll go behind enemy lines, knock out some enemy troops. They're very expensive, so I mean, these are basically going to be vehicle snipers that maybe you'll mix in with infantry every now and again to gain some dominance. And then we have our Legion 90s, which, you know, just makes them available in another deck type. Moving on down the ridiculous number of Chinese units list, we have the Lu Zandui. I'm almost certain I got that one right. Hallelujah! So the Lu Zandui, going to be another expensive squad. This one won't be Spec Ops though. Little more strength, you might notice. A lot more strength. So they'll be able to take a few more hits, and they'll be on the front line. They're super high quality though, so perhaps we won't see these guys so often. Maybe mix in with others. They do come out in 5 choices of vehicles, including 2 helicopters. There's also a 1990s variant, if you're at all interested, and you know, they are slightly more expensive with just, again, slightly better stats. And once you get into the 1990s, you get some crazy training. These guys are shock troopers, it says here, for training. I guess these are, you know, kind of designed to storm in a town and take it from somebody, specifically weaker units. But yeah, this 1990 variant will in fact have an extra vehicle, and it's actually this one, I believe, the 1990 Louise Ndui 90. Yeah, that's the one. So here's another guy. It says work in progress, so we're not going to judge it too hard. It's the Qin Wei 1, perhaps that is. Qin Wei 1. And it's another anti-air squad. I mean, the Chinese are going to have a ridiculous amount of infantry. In the modern world, they have a population of 1.3 billion people, so they have a lot to throw at you. Here's your Tank Shasui. Tank Shasu. That sounds very Japanese. That's a little racist for me to say, but here we are. And these are an AT squad, and their AT is not going to be particularly good. It's got 1200 range, so this is going to be very much being used on the flanks, not a main guy. Also, you know, the strength is very low, so they will get one-shotted from basically any tank. You can employ these in 4 ways, but, I mean, will you? Will you really? There's our U-by-E. God. I really do pity Eugen Systems for having to do all the research for this. They did a great job, by the way. These are going to be your reserve infantry type. It says here militia, which is basically reserve infantry. And they're 5 points each, which makes them insanely good. Now, the problem is you can only deploy 1 squad of these in 1 vehicle. So, I mean, you know, getting that bulk that you'd want with these guys is just not going to be possible. You won't be able to get, you know, I think how the current system works, and I could be wrong, you can't get 2 of the same card. I think in Alien Battle you could, but in this one it feels like they won't let you get 2 of the same card. So you'll only be able to get 1 card of these guys, because you're card locked. And our final type of infantry are the Shanshi. That's a funny word. Yes, this is going to be your probably most common Chinese infantry type. It's all-purpose. They call them regulars. You know, going to be on par with like the Motostrelki and the Chasseurs, and yeah, they will be deployed in 4 different vehicles. Oh yeah. And if you get the 1985 variant of the Shanxi, you will in fact get an extra vehicle, as well as slightly better training and a slightly higher cost. Actually, the cost is roughly the same. Why would you ever get this weaker Shanxi, I wonder? Oh yes, of course. Cat C-Decks. Cat C-Decks. These ones are not going to be available for Cat C-Decks. Of course. Moving on to the support category, we're going to see a few things of interest. This is a pickup truck with a dude on the back with a rocket launcher. So it's pretty much just an infantry AA squad, but they decided to add on the vehicle for mobility. Downside is that you kind of lose mobility because you can't climb into the mountains and ridges. So, you know, it's going to be the low point cost Chinese anti-air unit, and that's all. Here we have our HQ-7, which has the Crotal, which is, you know, been kind of beastly, actually. It's only 50 points. It has a ridiculously high range against helicopters and airplanes, and it's infrared, so maybe this one will see some sort of balancing patches in the future. Hard to say. It does have that cool fire and forget mechanism, which is always awesome. And yeah, just an absolute brilliant design. It's got a radar dish on it, does it? Yes, it does. But it's not a radar-based weapon, which is, you know, rather unusual. There's some differences in reality from this game, and that might be one. So here's the HQ-61. Just has a giant rocket on the back. This is kind of the one that we're used to seeing on TV. You know, the Chinese troops are marching through the square. Actually, this is North Korea I'm thinking about. And then these big rocket trucks are coming in. Now, they do have some clamps on the bottom here, lock down, and provide more stability for when they're launching. But honestly, when these things launch, I'm pretty sure this thing will just roll. It doesn't look all that stable. It does have radar-guided missiles, and it only carries 2 of them. The 2 that's on its back. So it's probably going to be a vehicle that fires very, very quickly, but needs to be resupplied very often. It has a decent amount of power, but doesn't have the accuracy it needs. With 40%, it hypothetically means that both rounds being fired from this vehicle could miss, which is not too good. It would, in the end, mean that you'd need to get 3 shots off of this vehicle before it could, you know, pay itself off in terms of value. Going to be an unusual choice for some people, specifically because of these giant blue rockets. So here's our PGZ-80. It's a, you know, really unusual unit here. It's an anti-air kind of flak thing, and it looks kind of like those ones you see in World War II, where the guys are, you know, exposed to the world and they have wind on their shoulders and whatnot. And it's only a 20-point vehicle, so it's kind of got that going for it. Note that the range against airplanes is not so hot, but helicopters very, very good. So this is going to be something that will be behind enemy lines. You'll right-click this on a helicopter and then pull it back into play. Moving up, we have the PGZ-95, which has a nice little rotating dish here, as well as some pretty badass guns, which are all radar-based rounds. So they're going to have a very, very long range and very, very potent accuracy. 50% for those types of rounds is considered to be quite high. This one also has a 60% rate on their infrareds, and they carry 3. So that means that 1 and, you know, a third are going to get off. So you might be able to just one-shot a plane with this particular anti-air unit. Not too bad. The Chinese, I guess, don't really like to paint their stuff with cool decals. I guess they go for bland, like America. But that's the Chinese for you. Here's our multi-rocket launcher. A pretty cheap one. It's on a truck. It's mounted. It's got a, you know, a medium range. 17,500 is a medium range. The dispersal's decent. You know, the closer you get to the action, the smaller this will become. So the stat itself is pretty meaningless. But yeah, I think it's cheap. I guess that's the big kicker here. The downside is that it's very low on strength and you know, all these other stats. So in actual battle, this could kill itself. You know, or the enemy having one of these could kill this, which is rather unfortunate. And the same will be true of this one, the PHL-81, which is once again another one of these rocket launchers, and you know, no armor, 5 strength. Yeah, it's, you know, moderately better in terms of range, and that's the big difference here. Most people would probably go for the 63 variant just because they save money, but they just have to move this closer, which is not a big deal. Another PLZ 70, 122mm gun. This is your standard artillery type, and yeah, basically used for sniping out vehicles. Very powerful single shots. This is another variant of it. Not going to be as strong because it has the MMG, increasing the cost ever so slightly. But it does gain an extra 4,000 range, which is pretty sick. On the downside, it seems that it's a really big target for other people to hit. But yeah, it's an overall improvement. The MG doesn't factor too much, but playstyles will be playstyles. I'm betting people will choose this one over the other one, seeing the two as they are. Here's your YW304 82mm, which is, the Chinese mortar. Looks very familiar to other mortars. The mortar popping out of the top here, and then these kind of poo, 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 maybe it's all mechanical, I don't really know. The last time I fired a mortar, I was at a cadet camp, and I was playing with an actual, World War II mortar, not one of these things. So yeah, it's got a little turret on it. That's not going to have too much of an effect. The range is good. It's a solid vehicle. I expect to see this one. I do. I expect to see the YW304 82mm. I'm not taking it back. Now here's the slightly upgraded version. As you can see, the range gets increased. The amount of damage it deals gets increased. The suppression factor gets increased. The rate of fire gets decreased. So you're paying basically for a slower mortar, but you get something that's more powerful. And potency is very important in the heat of the moment. If you see an infantry group that has been deployed and you want to pop them with mortar, you want something that's going to hit them really hard. Now, if there's something on the move, like those infantry trying to get to a town, well, this is going to be your bad boy boss. I mean, if they're out in the literal open, not in the forest, but in the literal open, going towards a town, you're going to want a guy with a fast rate of fire. So, little niches being discussed here in the artillery. Moving on to our Chinese tanks, which is, my favorite part of all this. We have the QT062, which is your Type 62 tank, I'm pretty sure it's called. And, yeah, just a standard 15-point tank, pretty decent value. The extra 5 points makes it a little bit better than the 10-point tanks, and in the field of battle, this will be a nice spam tank. The same can be said for the 62, which is 15 more points, and has kind of the similar sort of features. Moderate armor, medium armor, a gun that can actually, deal damage to tanks and vehicles, and you have a main gun that can deal with infantry. You also have your QTO62G, which is a larger gun. Now they love painting these Chinese symbols. Moderately better stats. The size is bigger, the optics is better, which is interesting, considering medium optics on a tank. That's actually kind of silly when you think about it. And it's also got the, standardized MG. Overall, I would say this is a pretty solid 50-point tank. Probably could go toe-to-toe with something like a Sheridan. So here's our QTS63-1, and it has an MG on the top, but according to this description, it's not supposed to have one. So maybe there's a modeling problem here. In the meantime, there is a nice main gun. It's a 20-point tank. In terms of stats compared to the 15-point tank, it's just slightly better. The downside is that it doesn't actually have an MG nest, which is problematic because you want these kind of 20-point tanks to wipe out infantry relatively easy. You want them to kill a vehicle and then wipe out whatever infantry remains. That's kind of the goal of this kind of tank. The same cannot be said for the ZTS-63-2. This has a pretty long-range rocket here, the Bastion, and it's a pretty badass looking tank all around for the Chinese. Really cool camo job being done here. Has a really weird little nest of metal here that you could probably prop up to do some field repairs or step into the actual vehicle. And it's got a really badass looking main gun. Armor is going to be its weak spot. And so this is going to play out like a lot of the French AMX series, where you're going to have a really potent weapon that does a lot of damage, but gets completely stopped. I mean, the Chinese never built for strong, potent tanks. They built for high production and fast wars. Kind of like the French. Moving on, we're into the ZTZ-88s, which are your Type 88 tanks, and yeah, it's got a gun, it's got a nest, and you're noticing that the armor values are slowly moving up. This one's at 10, which means that it will be a perfect medium tank. Absolutely perfect, and definitely can go toe-to-toe with a Sheridan. Might even be able to take on a T-55. But I do say might. Here's your TZ-85-2, 75-point tank. Really good camo job here. Improved stats overall, has a strength of 10, armor of 12, which is disgusting. You know, all these guys have medium optics, which I find to be unusual, but, you know, I guess that kind of makes sense. Accuracy is you know, borderline. But moving on to the next one, we have the ZTZ-85-2A, or IIA, or 11A, or whatever this number pattern is. And this is another sort of prototype of tank. Notice how it's 14, and we're getting heavier and heavier. So this might be considered to be the lightest of the heavy tanks, I'd say, on the battlefield. The Chinese would definitely call this a heavy tank. If, you know, it's cheap, which is kind of the theme of the Chinese units, and it has decent armor. So you're looking at maybe 2 of these could take out a T-80U, hypothetically. I mean, they do have an AP power, which is armored attack, of 18, which means they could penetrate the T-80U's armor. Moving on, we have the most heavily armored of the Chinese tanks, the TZ-85-11M. It has 16 armor, 2 guns, and a lot of really improved stats. It's worth noting that the Chinese don't have a lot of rockets on their tanks. In fact, you might say that they only have one, the ZTS-63-2. A big reason for this is that they're looking for things that are easy to produce. They don't want big, complicated mechanisms. They just want bulk. And if you're building rockets, which require their own factory or factories, you're not going to be able to outfit these tanks properly with those kind of weapons. So moving on to our Chinese recons, we have the BJ-212ZC, which is a Jeep recon. It's got 35 points to buy it. It's got a gun on it. It's going to be probably one of the weaker of the recon units, specifically because medium stealth is not so hot. But it does have very good optics, so there will be some places where you can place this. Now here's a cool enough unit, the Lai Ren, which are going to be the Chinese recon squad. Note that they do have shock training, they have very good optics and very good stealth, so you could also use these to get behind enemy lines, and snipe commands and vehicles, steal FOBs for fun. Yeah, they're 20 points, so it's going to be a little bit pricey, but they have very good all-around stats, very much worth 20 points. 2 ways to deploy them are both can be helicopters, which is a little unfortunate, but in the sky we have the MI-1, which is going to be your Chinese recon helicopter. Once again, these nice curved blades, so sweet, and on the back a nice reticulating fan. Could also be doing their traffic reports. The ZZC is going to be your armored car type recon unit. You know, it doesn't have particularly great optics. It's a medium stealth. It's not all that functional on the battlefield. That's one big problem that's always hurt these armored cars. This is the ZZC-56 armored car, and once again, similar problem. It's not too functional. I mean, yes, it can pick off infantry, and it can kite them, but that kind of situation doesn't happen long enough. Not too much worth talking about here. It can shoot up. You know, it's a pretty mediocre recon. I don't think anybody will get this. So here's our vehicle tab, which I did promise we'd get to. So this is another one of these BJ-212 105mm Jeeps, and a little graphical glitch. It seems this goes straight through the glass. Wait, no, wait, does it? Yeah, it does. It totally does. So yeah, this is going to be a flanking rocket. It's 10 points, low range. When the enemy comes in, the idea is that you turn these on, as we turn them off, when the enemy pulls into the kind of the kill zone, and then you can smash him with this. I enjoy doing this all the time. A lot of people don't favor doing this. They'd rather just use good units. This is the BJ-212HJ-8, which has a Saclos rocket launcher on the top, but it actually looks more like a chain gun, kinda, you know, like. But there's no chains here. It's just another one of these Jeep AT, slightly more expensive, slightly better rockets, and great range. So these guys can sit back quite far in comparison to these guys. This is their BR-DM-1HJ-73, reverse engineered from the Soviet tech. It has M-Cross rockets and decent range. It has 1 armor, meaning that it will in fact survive any kind of artillery fire, but will get picked off by tanks. This is their ZLF-92, the 92 designation, of course, indicating that it's a part of a specific deck type, in which you cannot play Cat C or Cat D with this. You have to play with all units. And yeah, it's a work in progress unit. It's got the Saclos launchers on it. That's pretty deadly. Moving on to our PGZ-63. You know, it's in the vehicle section because it's not quite good enough to actually deal with the anti-air component. So it's a really expensive way to kill infantry. And if you can get into good range to hit these helicopters with this, which is really hard by the way, it can stun helicopters and deal a pretty decent amount of damage. On the downside, basically no optics and no stealth, so this won't be too effective of an infantry hunter, but if you brought this along with your main army, it could help fatten damage, assuming that you get this to target the right units. So here's our SU-100. It's got, you know, 100mm round. The range is actually really good. These might get used. It might look familiar to a Russian unit because it looks like it's you know, a reverse engineered like SU-99 or something ridiculous, and they decided to call it 100 because they're one better than the Russians. So here's your PTZ-89. It's definitely a tank, obviously. It's in the vehicle section because it's not quite strong enough to be a tank. But anyways, the Chinese tanks are weak enough as is. So, yeah, it's, you know, actually pretty strong, 7 armor. I wouldn't be surprised if this moved over to the tank section eventually, because this is actually a pretty silly little vehicle. Speaking of silly little vehicles, here's a PTZ-89. It's got less armor, slightly better ordnance, and looks like the accuracy, is that what I'm looking at? Yeah, the accuracy goes up. So you charge 20 for what appears to be more or less an inferior vehicle, but one that has a higher range and functionality. It's kind of hard to choose between the two, actually, but it's got really lots of really nice cool stuff. I like the decals on the side. The Soviets, the Chinese star is always a cool symbol. Very well appreciated. So here's our infantry carrier. Yeah. Here's our ZBD-90, which is, you know, has this good old-fashioned autocannon. Will be able to hit lightly armored vehicles and infantry, so, you know, hurrah for this vehicle, perhaps. It would be nicer if it had more armaments on it, but as is, it's not too bad. Here's our ZDF-89HJ-8. It's got Saclos rockets, 8 of them total, a pretty decent range of 2450. The unfortunate point is that with that particular range set, and given that, actually it's a 10 strength, it might be able to survive 2 hits, potentially, depending on the tank. I mean, that's one of the big questions when you have AT. How many rockets can it get off? Can it survive? How many of those rockets hit? And if the survival rate is so low, it barely matters. But this looks like a pretty solid AT. It's got a 40% accuracy rate, which is mid-range, meaning that only 3.5 of these missiles are actually going to strike targets. Kind of scary. Moving on, we have the ZSD-531A. Just an anti-infantry vehicle, but you can store your infantry inside its bum. They will pop out of his bum. Here's our ZSD-531C, another infantry carrier. Once again, units pop outside of the bum. This one has a slightly better gun, it appears, and 2 armor. Not too shabby. This is the ZBD-86. Will there be units popping out of the bum? Why, yes. Yes, there will be. And this one has a rocket on it, which is very cool and useful considering how few rocket options that the Chinese actually have. So here's our ZSL. It's another one of these neato little carriers. This one is a 5-pointer. It's going to help deal with infantry. Probably going to die pretty easily. It's only got 1 armor. And here's a work in progress. I'm pretty sure this model probably isn't correct. This is a napalm launcher. It's a flamethrower tank. And it looks like they just copied over the TO-55. And they might make some modifications to this later on. But for now, this is the TO-55. Doesn't... I'm sorry, this is the ZTF-59LF. And, you know, I think every nation should have a napalm tank. That seems fair to me. So, congratulations, China. You have napalm. Moving on, we have the helicopters. The SA-342 Hawks has these SAC-Lois missiles here. 4 of them total 40 points. Actually a pretty good value. That's 10 points per rocket. With the air mobility and the ability to resupply very quickly, that works out to being 4 hits for every 10 rockets missiles you fire off. So as long as you can keep this guy alive, this 26-25 is going to pay off. This will most likely pay off. It's definitely a light skirmish unit. Z5 is an infantry carrier, as you can kind of see. And yeah, it's got some steam popping up from the front here. Somebody should fix that. The Mi-8T, another one of these. Actually, I don't think this one's an infantry carrier for some reason. No, it is definitely an infantry carrier. This is most definitely an infantry carrier. They pop out of his bum. This is the Z5A. It's got a lot of rocket pods. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rocket pods simultaneously. So we're going to see a large spread of rockets with this guy. That's not surprising at all. 35 points for that many rocket pods at once is a pretty damn good value. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw this unit get seen in professional play. So here's the Z9A. It's a simple little twin autocannon. Can pick up a few units. I don't see this being particularly useful or valuable to people unless you're a part of the cult of autocannon. In that case, Heil autocannon. Now we have the Z9A HJ8, which has little SAC-Lois missiles on the side, 4 of them in total. And a pilot inside, good. And some Chinese decals on the side, which could easily just be the whole symbol of the entire game. And yeah, like it's an 85 pointer, so it's quite expensive, but it's got a high range. So it's basically, if this unit dies, you are so screwed. This is the Z9A TY90. And yes, infrared missiles does in fact mean that this is the anti-air helicopter for the Chinese. You know, it's something that a lot of factions don't have and they wish they have, and luckily the Chinese do have it. And I suspect with DLC they might even add in some sort of hybridized version of this. But for now, this is going to be very good at assisting with these helicopter rushes and maybe even picking off enemy airplanes from time to time when these guys are landed. Moving into the air category, which we're all excited for, is the J2. This one's got some pretty cool tattoos on the side here. Maybe that's a kill count for this guy, 101 kills. Ugh. Given the fact that he has napalm, that wouldn't be surprising or unfounded. Yes, this is a napalm bomber. It's 45 points. It's small, it's light, it's weak. It dies very easily, but it gets the job done. It drops that napalm. Everyone should have a napalm bomber. There's your 500 kilogram bomber, the J7C. Once again, just a light little bomber. And hypothetically, they can fight a little bit of an air battle because they do have some air battle armaments. This is going to be the J7H. Very super colorful unit. Blue is the Dubba Diba Dubba Da. Right. And they have nice Chinese logos everywhere. And, you know, I can't find all the rockets here. Where is all the armaments? There's the 2 rockets on the side. Where's the big bomb? Is the big bomb in the cargo hold, perhaps? Maybe. Maybe that's the case. And I can't find the gun on this thing. Well, we'll have to see it in action soon. This is the J711. It's an anti-air superiority type fighter. It's got infrared. It's supposed to be designed for close-range combat. You can note by the range not being so hot on this. Because it's 45 points, you're going to be able to deploy a lot of these, spam a lot of these, and just do ridiculous amounts of damage. Now, in this game, Category C doesn't work how it used to, so you can't just Category C this and get like a ridiculous number of these units. No, you actually have to go specific with the nation, and then you get a ridiculous number of these units. So you don't even need to go Category C anymore. This is the G711A, people. Okay. It might look like a plane that you've seen before, because it has been reverse engineered from planes that you are aware of. And yes, they are going to be another one of these cheap kind of close range. And if you kind of get a lot of these two planes together, you can dominate the sky. I'm not saying that sky dominance is such a big thing in this game, but it could be. This is a slightly more expensive version of those. Basically does the same thing, but has a much higher range and, you know, Hulk smash, perhaps. Getting more expensive, more high quality, we have this plane here, the J8C. Once again, just more damage for more money. The downside is losing one of these is like losing two of these. But in terms of armaments, you kind of note that two of these is almost one of these, except this costs 5 more points because it has a lot of other stats that are better. So here's your JH78 FEIDAO. I'm going to call that the FIBO. And yes, this is going to be your anti-radar plane for the Chinese. Absolute sex machine this thing is. And yes, it is a prototype, so you have to play China specifically to get this. Or should I say the Red Dragons. It has an anti-radar bomb, it also has some infrared missiles, and it has a nice little cannon for a gun run. So we can do a lot of cool stuff. Very good all-around anti-radar plane. So here's the Q5. It's pretty simple. It's a 75-point rocket thing. Comes in, fires its rockets, gets out of there ASAP. That's all it does. But, I mean, these have become very popular in air-land battle. But considering that these rocket pods don't do much damage to boats, it's hard to believe they'll become popular in Red Dragon. Now here's another Q variant, the 511. This one is dropping a cluster bomb, and also has some anti-air ordnance. But once again, cluster bombs are not particularly good against boats, so this could see play on ground-based maps, or, you know, in land-dominated maps, but I wouldn't hold a candle to it. Now here, my friends, is the Q5D. Now, once again, these SAL missiles, not particularly too good against boats. The anti-radar are proving to be the boat killers, but I imagine after things are balanced, that this will be fine again. So we might see this particular vehicle in action again. And remember, SAL is S-A-L-H is very similar to SACLOS and MCLOS in their kind of designations. This is a tank killer. It's 115 points. It has enough arms to matter. And our final Chinese plane is going to be the Su-27SK, which of course is a Chinese modeled Su-27. And yeah, you know, they have a pretty damn cool design. It's very, very modern, which is surprising for China. And lots of anti-air armaments. Lots of cool insignias here for the Chinese. They definitely want to stamp their name on top of communist technology, and they did it. Now moving on to the thing that people care about most, which is the boats. We do have a few boats for the Chinese. This is the Type 51 Luda, which is kind of a juggernaut. I'm pretty sure anything that's really well done like this, instead of calling it what it really is called, which is a destroyer or a, you know, corvette, I'm going to call them juggernauts, because that's just what they are. They are floating bastions. This guy has some pretty insane rocket range. It has 150 strength, which means it'll be able to take about 3 or 4 hits from the enemy ships. It's got lots of anti-plane tech, and it's so slick and so cool. The actual command ship is this guy, 90 points. Not nearly as strong in terms of weaponry, but does have 150 health. So if you can get out a lot of these guys, you'll be in good shape. Now we have this one with this prototype. Oh, that's our sort of Huban again. So coming down the line, oh, we have the Feibao again, except this one has radar guided rockets, which means that it'll do ridiculous amounts of damage against ships. Well, it should hypothetically, but not always. These are specific ship type, anti-ship weapons they read on them, and they only hit ground even though they're radar. Yes, I know, that's sad. Moving down, we have ourselves a Musket 205. Now this is Heat, Fire and Forget, Radar, Ship. These are very low on hit points. They can only take 1 hit total, but they're so cheap you can get into a lot of these guys. So if you put them behind your big juggernauts, the Moskets can fire off those nice radar-guided rockets and deal some pretty insatiable amounts of damage. On to this, we have the Shantao. These are kind of the guys that you want after you have gained control of the water. You can also deploy these guys in canals, as well as the Shantao. You can actually, I should mention that the Shantao and the Shantao, that's what I'm talking about, can be deployed in the canals, which makes it really good for dealing with land units in canal-based maps. But once you have control of the ocean, you have control of the sea, you can just put these guys along the coast and they will do ridiculous amounts of damage. This 40 strength looks really tiny, but when you're dealing with land units, that's actually quite high and they become very hard to kill. They also provide some pretty exceptional anti-air options, especially considering that they're hard to kill, and will kind of be juggernauts. So here's the Type 37-2, which is another one of these juggernaut type units. And yes, it has lots and lots of units. Now, one thing that was requested of me is that I highlight the thing DEF, which is anti-missile defenses. Yes, they have those. It's kind of a, you know, a countermeasures for boats. Of course, you know, even the Patriot missile, which we used in, the Americans used in Iraq, it was very expensive for what you got. So yeah, there's that. It's going to be another one of these big, giant, expensive ships. It's 90 points. The Chinese definitely have the cheaper end of the ships, which means they can get out bulk. And bulk in the ocean can be very, very important. Specifically if the opponent is not shooting down the right ships. If you do an anti-radar push on a Shantou, you're going to have a bad time. They don't have radar. If you hit it with a SALH type rocket, yeah, this thing will die very easily. It'll get 2-shot. You only need 2 bombers to kill this, but it's only 20 points. Whereas when you go with this guy, it's got radar missiles. It is an anti-radar guy, but it has 125 health, so you have to do a ton of damage. It might take 2 rounds to kill that guy with a guy, or an anti-radar bomber, that doesn't refill very often at all. So that's our Marine Corps for the Chinese, and that is all of the new Chinese units in the game. My name is Troublemaker. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys for joining me, and I'll see you next time.